I think that we all understand that we are lied to on a massive scale, or for the most part, most of the more awake progressives that I talk to and that tend to hang out at my shows tend to understand that we are lied to on a tremendous scale. And it's hard to get away from it. It's hard to find real truth. You have to seek out real truth. Now, luckily, we're in the information age, so it's possible to do that. You have the internet, which has been a tremendous resource in order to find out what's really going on. But you really have to sift and dig in order to get to it. And you have to develop a serious bullshit detector. And it takes a lot of work to stay informed. It's not easy. But, you know, that's the way things have gotten, the reason that things have gotten, sorry about that, as bad as they are. Because people have chosen to take the easy route. And not just the easy route. It's not just that people that don't want to wake up or don't want to realize what's going on and actually stand up and fight what's really happening instead of all the many distractions that they throw at you, and stay focused and get things like single payer insurance that everyone needs, or a living wage that everyone needs. These are things we should all be united on and things we should all be moving forward and achieving with our numbers alone. But we allow them to distract us and keep us going in every different direction, which they never stop trying to do. And even though a massive amount of people are waking up and starting to think for themselves and starting to actually see through the bullshit, there is still a whole lot of people who are not and don't seem to want to. They seem very content letting others do their thinking for them. And that's very frustrating. It makes you want to shake them. They just regurgitate whatever the mainstream media told them to say. And it's gotten to the point where it seems like the mainstream, well, it's not to seem like, they are giving them talking points to counter what we say. When you actually tell them what's going on, they'll hit you with some bullshit about Russia rigging an election, or Putin doing this, or Kim Jong-un saying that. And you're like, okay, but you're ignoring this, this, and this. Oh, well, there's nothing there. You know, they said that you would say things like that. That's not true. That's fake news. Well, it's not. It's just I took a little more time to get informed about this and actually look into it, because I understand it has real world consequences. And you think that Rachel Maddow and all those people, and Anderson Cooper, you think they did research and they're telling you the right thing. They're not. Don Lemon's reading a fucking teleprompter. He's not going out there and getting his hands dirty and trying to find you any truth. He cashes his gigantic paycheck and he tells you what he's told to tell you, and he tells you to feel about it the way he's told to tell you to feel about it. And to a lot of people, that's all they want. They just want to be told what's going on, told how to think about it, and then they move on with their day. They give it no thought and they don't question it. And I don't understand that, because it has real consequences that affects everybody. But you let yourself buy into bullshit about these talking head Republicans that make lies about single payer and why we can't afford it, when we absolutely can afford it. It absolutely is possible, but these people allow themselves to be tricked by these talking heads into thinking that we can't. That it's a crazy idea, when really we're the only country in our economic status that doesn't have single payer health insurance and doesn't take care of its citizens. You know, and it's just ridiculous. But we've been, and you might want to wonder how it got this way. But this is designed. We were trained for this. We've been trained since we were children. We weren't educated, we were indoctrinated. They didn't want, our education system is not concerned with producing well-informed critical thinkers. Our education system is concerned with producing worker bees that don't question the system and do as they're told, and handle and just do the steps depending on whatever instructions they're given. Step 1 through 6, finish the task. That's what you're taught to do, to keep your head down, not question. You're given the flavor of the information they want you to have, or just enough that they feel it will make you usable for what they want you for. But they don't want you questioning anything. They don't want you asking questions. They want you to regurgitate answers that you were given. That's the way you're trained. You're trained as a test taker. So you're told what they tell you to remember. You remember it. You repeat it when you're given a test, and that gets you a good grade. You're not rewarded for thinking. You're rewarded for remembering and regurgitating information. So then you move on to doing that as an adult. You just switch from your textbooks to a TV news channel. You used to let your textbooks think for you, and now you let the news think for you. Whatever the establishment or the government tells you, you just swallow that, take it, and move forward. That's very dangerous, because even though I get the draw of it, I never was the type that completely bought into mainstream media bullshit and lies, but I was jaded. I did fall into that trap, and that's the other thing. We have a massive amount of people that don't vote. I think only 46% of people voted in this last election. So that's over 53, 57, 54% of the population, of the American population, that could have voted, couldn't be bothered with it. They don't care, whether it's that they don't care because they're jaded, or they don't care because they feel like they can't affect it, or they just don't care. They just don't give a fuck. They don't want any part of it. They don't want to think about it. I know those types too. That's dangerous. All of that's dangerous. And I used to fall into the jaded end. I still voted in the big elections, but I had no idea what I was voting for. I didn't research candidates. I didn't research anything like I do now. I didn't look at anything like I do now. And when you start doing that, it actually gets a little scarier, because you see how bad things are. And, if I was a regular person, or my old jaded self, and I wasn't staying so focused on the news, would I have even understood how bad what happened in Standing Rock was? Would I have understood what really happened in Ferguson? Would I have understood any of that stuff? I wouldn't have even questioned it. But now that I'm looking at it, it gets scary, because you wonder how this goes on. How are we going down this road? And I feel like America is in a lot of trouble. Not just the fact that our democracy has been hijacked and taken over, I believe, since Kennedy was assassinated, but actually, I believe that's when the deep state coup actually went into full swing. When they actually took over the full strength of the government is when they assassinated Kennedy, in my opinion. But it's been a long time that they've had this control, and it gets overwhelming, especially once you try to start informing people and you're up against a massive amount of propaganda and indoctrination. They've been programmed to just reject what you're saying. For one, it's a lot more work. It's a lot more work being awake. And when you try to tell somebody about what's actually going on and they start to fight against it, it's not just their cognitive dissonance being triggered. It's also what you're talking about means I got to fight. That if what you're saying is true, and the economy, the economical warfare and all that's really going on, that the middle class has been squashed on purpose, and that all this greed is really being allowed to happen, and we're being in this endless cycle of wars, and it's all just been bullshit propaganda trumped up to get us to support them, which they keep doing and will continue to do. And we're sending real soldiers over to do that. When you start to think, oh, okay, so none of that's been for why I think it is, that this hasn't been going on for the reasons I've been told, that gets overwhelming. It's scary. And I don't know, that's what I'm talking about. When my notes kind of end here, I don't know what to do. I don't know what the answer is. But I know that it's becoming a clusterfuck. I can see that. I know that when you're arguing with these people, you get frustrated. But you need to keep in mind, I think it's important for us not to get frustrated, for one, even though that's really hard to do. When you're arguing with somebody and they're repeating propaganda at you, and I know it's frustrating because I do it myself, but you've had this argument 100 times. But you got to keep cool, because if you don't, then they're just going to get triggered as well. And now you're just arguing. Neither one of you are listening to the other anymore. I think it's one of the things we need to do is start trying to be more understanding of what they're up against. Not just the fact that accepting it is scary, but that the counter propaganda to the truth is overwhelmingly strong. And yeah, you may have broken out of that, but that didn't happen for you overnight. And it's also something that kind of has to happen for you as a person, which is what made the coming to a close on this outline of this rant hard, because I don't know what to do. And I understand that it's very frustrating. And I really thought I was going to be able to come up with a better way to get out of this, but I don't know what you do when you have, dozens of 24-hour cable news networks that are dedicated to convincing people that you're crazy. It gets frustrating. Let me see. Helen says it's easier to be afraid than it is to fight. It is. It definitely is. That's very, very true. It's also just easier to just ignore it. You don't even have to be afraid. Like a lot of people don't even get to the part where they're afraid. They just ignored it. They didn't care. But they've trained you to think that way. You only think about yourself and your own problems. And they've also got you so economically strangled that you have a ton of your own problems to occupy yourself with. So you end up thinking about your own little bubble and only what affects you. And it's sad that things are that way. Let's see. Meredith says deep state propaganda. Yeah, it's very effective propaganda. And they put a lot of time and effort into getting it as strong as it is. The American propaganda machine is, I think, their strongest and most important weapon. Definitely the most important weapon used against us as a method of control. What they can do with that media and the way they control the narrative and the way they control, down to the way people feel about things, is frightening. You know? Rye says, hey, good to see you, Rye. I haven't seen you in a while. Rye says, first find common ground and express agreement. Ask them to explain. Request more detail. This, they write, may be the only form of thinking that will shatter the illusion. Oh, okay, that's from an article. Yeah, that's a good point. Because if you attack, then they automatically go to defend. They're not listening to you. You're arguing now. You're not open to new ideas. And especially with these ideas that are so ingrained, when you have to see that the reality is actually far different from what you've been told it was, your mind's going to fight against that. So as Rye was saying, I think it's very important to be patient and like he's saying, involve them in the conversation. Let them come to the conclusion themselves. Just kind of guide it that way, maybe. You know, as frustrating as hard as that may be, I think we need to be patient. We need to be more patient because we can beat our head against the wall, you know, and repeat and repeat and repeat ourselves and be hateful and judgmental. But where has that gotten us? Has that accomplished anything up till yet? I mean, I don't see us making a whole lot of progress in that way. I see us fighting amongst ourselves a lot in that way, but Ariel says exactly. Thank you. Kathy says the scab has been ripped off and we should all be going off on Congress, especially in the individual states. Mine are heartily and utterly sick of me. It's hard to listen to the ones who wear Trump shirts when they're your adopted kids. I try not to discuss politics with them because we'll fight, and I'm not about it. It is, and it's frustrating. Sometimes it's maddening to me. Like, I live in a rural area, so I'm surrounded by a lot of people with radically different views than my own, but they'll be in a similar economic status as me, and I don't understand that. You know, a lot of the issues that I'm for benefit you as well, and you vote against your own best interests all the time, and it seems to be completely out of ignorance. You know, when you listen to them talk, the reasons don't seem to have logic behind them. It seems to be mostly emotionally driven. You've been divided into teams and convinced that whatever team you chose or you're on and you decided to be with is the best team. And that's the information you listen to. So if you've decided that being a conservative is your team, you turn it into Fox, they do your thinking for you. You know, if you're a Democrat, you have a couple more channels, but same thing. They do your thinking for you. You know, they just tell you what to think. Brainwashed. Yeah, Ariel's nailed it. You know, and at this point, and this is why it's hard not to get mad, but you got to be to be ignorant at this point is to be willfully ignorant. The truth is there. It's available to you. I mean, if I can find it, you know, I'm just a poor guy from rural Missouri. I can find truth. You can find it too. Every one of you is walking around with a computer in your hand. You know, to stay ignorant with that much resources at your disposal, that's frustrating. It makes you angry because you feel like, how in the hell do you still have your head buried in the sand? But you're not going to get them to take their head out of the sand by yelling at them or judging them. And it's hard not to fall into that trap because it's like seeing a train wreck and screaming that the train is coming. The train is coming. There's a train coming right at us. And everybody, oh, there's no train. They're arguing with you about the train. And you just keep screaming louder about this train. And then they're not listening to you. Now you're a crazy person. But we got to get them to see this fucking train because the train is really there. So we got to find a way to get them to understand, to get more people to understand. I feel like we're close to a tipping point. I feel like the establishment is acting afraid. When you see the way they're acting and the moves they're making, especially the media, and how the media seems to have gotten so afraid of whatever they're afraid of, which what I think it is that we showed power. In the Democratic primary, we showed power, and they are deathly afraid of that, and the fact that they're seeing more people wake up and not listen to their bullshit. Their bullshit isn't sticking. Think about it, wall to wall, Russia, Russia, Russia. No, but not enough people bought it. If people would have bought it, that would have been enough. They'd have moved forward. They're trying to start a war. Now they want North Korea. Not enough people were scared. Now they're doing the race, and the race is working. The race is an old standby. That one keeps working for them. That hardly ever lets them down. But we need to stop letting ourselves be divided like this, and divided and distracted so easily. I think that movement freaked them out. I think that show of power, and actually that show of backbone as well, with what ended up making Donald Trump president, I think freaked them out. And I think they're afraid of us, and that's good. So to me, they're showing weakness. To me, this media freak out, when I see them doing this, and taking their reputation and people's opinions of them and just throwing caution to the wind and going, I don't give a fuck, I'm going to regurgitate every lie that's thrown at me so I can keep my paycheck. The journalistic integrity went out the window a long time ago. To watch that happening makes me feel like somebody's on the ropes. Somebody's afraid. There's no reason to be acting this way if you're not afraid. Let's see. Cindy says people treat politics like professional sports. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was saying. How about you've been brainwashed to follow your team, and that's all you're worried about. And you'll sit and listen to these people. I still have people that defend Trump to me, as outrageous as that is. But when you really listen to them talk, they're not really defending Trump. They can't point to anything good that he's done or anything like that. They're just regurgitating the things that they were told to say. That they'll tell you about how bad Obama is. They really got nothing positive to say about Trump. But they have to defend him because that's their guy. It's kind of like your favorite NFL team. If you're someone that's obsessed with football and they get a shitty quarterback and you hate the guy, but you got to keep, well, that's our guy. I wish we get a better guy, but, you still defend him because he's your quarterback. But same kind of thing. They'll vote for any R. And then there's Democrats that are the same fucking way. They got no interest in looking into people like Kamala Harris or Cory Booker or Joe Biden. They'll just get mad at you because you tell them you wouldn't vote for them either. And they're like, well, nothing's good enough for you. You're like, no, just why don't you look into them? Why don't you dig a little deeper, peel that surface layer back and look past that D and find out if what's underneath it really matches that D. And if it doesn't, then move on. That's all we're saying. Let's see. Kathy says the convincing point will be martial law, and then it'll be too late. Yeah. And this whole thing with trying to manufacture civil unrest right now, that is very suspicious to me, and it screams. The stuff that's going on, it seems like they're trying to cause a division. They're trying to magnify and manufacture divides between us. And it seems like they're egging on civil unrest, and just to make it move and get bad enough that, like Kathy said, can roll out martial law. And I think if you ever see that happen, if we ever let them get to the point where they're able to do that, that you can kiss any semblance of what America used to be goodbye. I think it's gonna be a very different country from that point on. That's just my opinion, but I think our way of life is ending anyway. I think that this just seems very suspicious, the way things are moving. Seems like a lot of panic moves, trying to pick fights, build up boogeymen. Anytime I see them doing that, it gets my flags up. But, the things about the petrodollar and the way that that's being threatened around the globe, things could be bad. And it wouldn't take long for our economy to crumble. If the dollar was to collapse, it wouldn't take long at all.